Welcome back to the Wild Game Dynasty podcast. Today we've got a guest who has spent decades in the deer woods and has a greater understanding and wealth of knowledge about whitetail behavior than most of us will ever know. Dan Schmidt. He is the editor-in-chief of Deer and Deer Hunting magazine. He's the vice president for Media 360. He's one of the most respected voices in the whitetail community and someone who's been helping hunters understand these incredible animals for over 30 years. He's the host of Deer Talk Now podcast, one of the best deer hunting podcasts out there. So, without further ado, Dan Schmidt, welcome to the show. And Dan, before we get started, can you just give us a brief rundown of how you got to where you are today with the Deer and Deer Hunting magazine?
Sure. Okay. Well, thanks, Ryan. My story, I've probably repeated this so many times that I feel like I've said it so many times. I started in this will tell you how old I am. 1981, I was in 8th grade. And our English teacher asked us to write a paper on what we wanted to do when we grew up. My theme paper was I wanted to become the editor of Deer and Deer Hunting magazine. So I didn't actually remember that until I got to this job. I did not. I mean, I love deer hunting that much, but I went to school, went to college. Excuse me. My professor said if you want to work in any type of journalism industry, you should get a accredited journalism program. There was only 2 at the time in Wisconsin, Madison and UW Oshkosh, and I went to Oshkosh. It was that big deal that back then to be nationally accredited journalism degree. So I got that, worked in newspapers for 3.5 years, and I've been trying to get to Deer and Deer Hunting, which is about 2 hours from Milwaukee from where I lived then. And but back then I wrote an outdoor column. I got it in 14 Wisconsin newspapers just to get my feet wet. Long story short, I got here in 1995 as the lowest man on the totem pole, associate editor, basically opening the mail, you name it, I did it all. And I got my feet wet, and I worked very, very hard. Was promoted to editor-in-chief in 2001. And then we started a TV show. Long story short, I've been here 31 years. So learned from Charlie Alsheimer, John Ozoga from UP up there in Munising. One of the greatest, if not the greatest, deer researchers, in my opinion, in history. Keith McCaffrey from Wisconsin, Bob Zaglin from Texas. I always said it wasn't my knowledge. My MO was, and I was taught this by my dad and anybody else who was my elder. They said, listen to your elders and be a sponge. Mm-hmm. And that's what I tried to do. And there's so many great, Gary Clancy, Bryce Towsley, Greg Miller, some of the greatest outdoor writers on the planet I got to work with. And Charlie was my mentor. Charlie Alsheimer was my mentor. And he kind of, he was in New York, but we would call and talk. I love baseball, and we would talk baseball every day. and then he would just bring me along, and the people here at Deer and Deer Hunting helped me along. But now today, I worked in the corporate end of it for 25 years. We bought the magazine back, and we're a small company now, Media 360. We've had it for 6 years now. I'm trying to think, 7 years. So yeah, it's Brad Rux and Steve Bartella and myself, and we have a great small staff here at our office in central Wisconsin. So yeah, that's my story. And I always tell, I would go do speaking engagements at schools, and I tell kids, do those jobs still exist? Well, kind of, but as you know, with your podcast, things are evolving quickly.
Right.
With podcasts and social media, and television is kind of in its golden age where it's still there, but it's not is what it was 20 years ago. So the outdoors industry is still vibrant. It's still strong. But there's so many different avenues now that if somebody would like to work in the outdoors industry, there's opportunity there. But I'd always tell kids, like, go to school, get a degree in marketing or advertising or public relations or some business, something that you can fall back on, that you can maybe use and leverage that in your quest and pursuit to maybe do a similar type of job. I love it. I mean, I grew up. My dad was a carpenter. It was hard work. I'd haul shingles up on roofs and drywall, and I always said I could actually be working for a living because I know what it's like to do manual labor. This, yeah, the hours are long, but I get to talk about deer hunting every day. So,
Right.
and not too much can beat that.
Living the dream.
Exactly.
That's awesome. Well, so what I wanted to talk to you today about is you're in Wisconsin. We're up here in Baraga, up in the UP, and we've got our own deer issues. But Michigan as a whole, CWD is huge down in the Lower Peninsula, but not
Yep.
quite as big as you guys in Wisconsin. I guess I say as states, like Wisconsin's probably leading unfortunately, the number game.
Well, as far as publicity goes, yes. CWD, and I don't have those stats in front of me. It's in many states. It's appearing in many states.
Yeah.
The messaging is really outpacing the problem. Does CWD exist? Yes, it exists, but there's no cases where it's decimating deer herds. And you've probably seen some of my rants on this on social media.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you're spot on.
I'm by no means an unbeliever or whatever that some people want to say. It's just, as far as perspective goes, it's something that should states be aware of it? Yes. Should they? My whole point is all the money that is being spent on it is being spent predominantly foolishly, because the testing isn't doing us any good. What we need to do is researching the disease, and that is not keeping up. And that's but there's a lot of fear, because when it shows up in a state for the first time, that's all you see for headlines. And going back to the whole journalism angle,
Mm-hmm.
the journalists are terrible these days. They are not chasing the story. They're basically going for the clicks, like, oh my gosh, CWD was found in blah, blah, blah county, Michigan right now. And then the people who don't know anything about CWD freak out.
Right.
And it's scaring people away from deer hunting. It's scaring people away from consuming venison. There's no proven connection at all. After 60 years of research, there's no connections whatsoever between chronic wasting disease in deer and human health issues. People want to link it to Creutzfeldt-Jakob's disease, which is a disease. Each species has its own prion brain disease.
Right.
In humans, in Creutzfeldt-Jakob's CJD, your chances of getting that just by chance, which it does happen, are 1 in a million. And we knew that in 1967, and we know that today.
Right.
And so there's no correlation whatsoever. So, but I don't know if I answered your question, but CWD, it's a hot topic.
Yes.
But it's being mismanaged, in my opinion, across the country.
Do you know like the origin? Have you read much into that as far as
Yeah, it's started back in Wyoming, in Colorado. There were pens where there were some Frankenstein-like experiments going on. They were injecting deer to see if they could. Basically, it was a scrapie, which is the sheep prion disease, to see if it would infect them. And lo and behold, they discovered the wasting disease, the prion disease, in whitetails.
And this was in Fort Collins, Colorado, at CSU College.
Yes.
Okay.
And basically, it stayed. It was basically, now, was CWD in the wild in places that it very well could have been?
Right, and that's, I think, kind of disregarded. Who knows how long it's been. If you look at scrapie, what I've researched is they think that, or at least documented from just stories and history, is back in the 1700s.
Yes, hundreds of years.
Right.
That they knew about scrapie. And actually, there are theories that that's where this came from, because it was overgrazed sheep ground where some of this was found. Now, if you look at the timeline, it really didn't start to be studied again for another, I'd have to look. I just wrote a story about this. 10, 15 years?
I want to say, so they kind of kept it under wraps at CSU. They were using deer from Wyoming, Laramie, I think.
Okay.
And So they essentially put mule deer into this pen that they were studying scrapie on sheep. So it's an infected area, most likely. And like you said, who knows what studies they were doing on it. But eventually, 1967, they discovered CWD, a malnourished deer. And they kept it really quiet, like you said, for like 10 to 15 years. I think they opened up about it once they finally found CWD in wild elk in 1981.
Correct.
Is from what I could research.
That sounds pretty much accurate, yes.
Okay. And then that's when more information and research.
More information and research came out. Now, like, how did it spread? There's theories about that. We do know that in certain cases it was transferred over state lines. When you see that, and it didn't really become a national story until it was found here in Wisconsin in 2001.
Okay, it's about same as Michigan.
Yeah, and then it was like it's now if you use that example of when it was found in Wisconsin, when it was found in Michigan, the reaction among the public is no different than today when it's found in, Tennessee or Kentucky or,
Arkansas,
wherever.
Yeah.
It's the great unknown, and it's also the shock and awe value thanks to the internet generation, where they're saying zombie deer disease. And basically just that's their way of, I don't want to say cutely describing a brain disease, but the other criticism I've always had was for 20 years after it was found here in Wisconsin, the same pictures that I used when we first reported on this 25 years ago are being used today.
Well, that's the thing. Now, if you YouTube it, you're just going to get videos of deer with EHD. But they're saying it's CWD.
Or they're showing pictures of red stags that are, just stock photos because they don't have access to real photos. You know what I'm saying? And then CWD is a silent killer. You seldom see, like you said, the pictures that you see that are the shock and awe photos, invariably, it's EHD. Because those deer, they look terrible. They're running around in circles. There could be deer with cranial abscess disease too. I've seen videos of that. They're saying this is CWD, and I was like, no, it's not. Now there are a handful of photos of deer in pens that had CWD that waste away in their skin and bones.
Right.
There's a handful of photos out there. But that's my biggest criticism is there has been very little or very lazy reporting done on the disease itself. And that's being fed back to the American consumer as far as how serious is this disease really? Number one, there are no. Some people are going to say, "Oh, yes, there are." There was a study in Wyoming that showed population decline, and there was a study in Kansas that showed population decline. We're talking very, very small regional areas that had, somewhat drops. Now, once the disease reaches a certain saturation point, they say that it could cause. We haven't seen those saturation points. We've seen saturation points increase in some areas. But we've also seen natural resistance that they believe is causing the deer herd to just, in Wisconsin alone, the DNR itself, our record for deer harvest was right around in that 2001 area. We killed 618,274 deer. Hunters killed those deer in one season. At that season, they estimated our deer population at 1.6 million deer.
Okay.
This past season that we just had, they're estimating our deer population at 2.2 million deer.
Right.
So they're saying we have more deer by a long shot today than we did in 2001. That's one part of the equation. The other part of the equation, they're saying, well, yeah, but it's going to be reducing age structures by and large. Could it? Yes, it could. We have not seen that.
Right.
We have not seen mass reduction in age structures in the whitetail herd. So there's a lot of things there that are moving parts that I'll go toe to toe with anybody who wants to argue it, because it's just, It's a lot of fear mongering,
Right.
and it's turning people away from hunting, and it's turning people away from consuming venison when it should not be.
Absolutely. And Michigan's very similar with you guys as far as our deer herd numbers have gone. Like I said, the UP's a different story, but the lower peninsula, the population has exploded all through
Yeah,
these years of CWD. I mean, it seems like deer reproduction is far outlasting the CWD effects itself, and that's with the deer culling. And I don't know what your thoughts on that deer culling. The government's coming in shooting deer because they think killing off the herd will help get rid of CWD. But
it's not going to.
it almost seems
They just found that in Missouri, they just backpedaled on that big time,
okay.
because that basically the thought process, and I'm sure you're very educated on this, so but the thought process there is they call it the spark effect.
Hmm.
So they find a case of CWD, and the thought process is they go in and try to knock that population. It's not a density dependent disease, number one. So the thinking is, well, we knock this population way down, that's going to help, quote unquote, fight CWD. Well, if I was being an optimist, I'd say, okay, if I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt, I would say maybe for 6 months, but that population is going to rebound.
Right.
And the other thing is, we know about deer dispersal, and we know about the other things. Should hunters, take precautions? It's up to you if you want to do that. But I would say, if you're being responsible and you shoot a deer, yeah, go ahead, properly dispose of that carcass.
Hmm.
Absolutely. And maybe not throw it out in the woods. But is that really going to help prevent the spread? You tell me. That's like taking a speck of sand off the ocean and saying, well, I just cleaned up the beach. It's
Right.
we got deer dying every day, that if we truly think we can play God and stop a disease that's in the wild, we can't.
Hmm.
Should we do nothing? I'm not saying that either, but I'm saying cooler heads need to prevail, and the focus, if we truly want to fight this disease, if we truly want to find a better answer to this disease, is research on the disease. But the other thing too, and as you know, if you follow the money trail,
Right.
the money trail is testing, 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 and research keeps people in jobs.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. Grants.
so you're always going to have some people saying, "Oh, you got to do as much testing as possible." They're getting federally funded grants to do this.
Hmm.
And so you got to be skeptical. You have to really think. I want to touch on one thing, Ryan.
Absolutely.
I know you're from Michigan, and the Michigan people need to know, if they don't know already. As you said, the UP is a different world when it comes to whitetails.
Yes.
And when you see the population fluctuations in the UP, that's primarily, John Ozoga has written about this many times in Deer and Deer Hunting. It's the fracturing of those long-standing wintering yards
Yes.
that has affected those populations. And with the UP, you have boom and bust deer populations, which John predicted 20 years ago,
Yep.
that when those busts happen now, it's going to be a long time, if ever in our lifetime, that you're going to see the booms that they had, just because of the way that habitat is. And that is a different habit. If anybody listening to this podcast doesn't know the UP, it's a different world. It's not Lower Michigan. It's not Wisconsin. It's not even Minnesota. And Minnesota has a lot of north woods. But the UP is a different animal when it comes to that. So don't confuse low deer populations somehow connected to a disease, CWD especially,
Right.
in the UP.
Yes.
There is no correlation there.
Absolutely correct. I mean, we've had one test positive, I think 2018, down in Dickinson. But I mean, no, the population in the UP, like you said, it's entirely based off of our wintering herds. What I think now, there is the DNR says there is actually only 6 left, 6 tiny little
Wow.
pieces of They call them deer wintering complexes.
Yes.
That actually can sustain some deer. That's it. So we're in a new era of hunting in the UP. It's unfortunate. So we have a 4-year-old son, and we take him to deer camp every year. And you want to preserve and have him have these opportunities. But I mean, the deer herds up here have been like this. I've exclusively pretty much hunted in the UP
Oh, wow. Okay.
for my entire life. We have a cabin on the east side of the UP, closer to Newberry.
Okay.
So I've kind of seen this my whole life, and it's still the UP, so it's still rich in the culture. So no matter how low the deer herd gets, but like you said though, it needs to be an understanding of the hunters up here. It's like, look, we're never going to have that deer herd they had in the 80s and 90s. That's just, it's our land, and the food sources and the wintering complexes are essentially gone. Whether or not they can reboot that through foresting, I mean, it's hard because
And
80% is,
that's the problem that they're having.
yeah.
That you have way too many conflicting entities there. You've got the federal, you got the state, you've got major landowners, which would be, I'm assuming, lumber companies.
Yep, that's the majority. They say the UP 80% is public land. Well, to an extent, most of that's all CFP, commercial forest program. So
Okay.
sure, it's open publicly to hunt on. However, that land is for those companies to essentially commercially forest timber. They're not
Right.
going to cut or grow things that are necessarily beneficial to deer. They're going to do it for monetary gains. I mean, it's a business. That's what
Yep.
you wouldn't want it any other way. It's just it is what it is, and I think it is kind of a new era of hunting in the UP. Or as far as more people maybe becoming to understand this more now, I don't know.
Sure.
It's still a touchy topic.
No, absolutely.
But to bring it back to the CWD, like more or less in the lower of Michigan, right now we have in our house they have a bill proposed for baiting, to bring it back, and I almost see this as maybe like a small glimmer of hope of like maybe they're backing off CWD a little bit. If they're willing, if that can happen, do you think that would be a game changer if they brought baiting back? I know you guys.
A game changer in what regard?
Maybe taking some light off of CWD, or maybe.
Now, I'm not exactly sure how it's going there. I will tell you in other areas where they have it. What has happened, and it's good and bad depending upon how you look at it. Um, in Wisconsin, for example, the you've got some of these regulations now being they're partisan. So like you got one party saying we want to bring back baiting, and that's going against what had traditionally happened. I believe this is just my personal opinion, and I know it's probably controversial.
Mm-hmm.
To me, I don't bait. I own my own land. I plant food plots and stuff like that. To me, I see nothing wrong with baiting. I don't. And I
Mm-hmm.
know some people that will just drive them crazy. They'll say, that's not hunting, blah, 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 blah. You go to Michigan. Michigan historically was a baiting state. Texas is the number one baiting state.
Okay.
Done right, done under regulations, I see nothing wrong with it. I see the opportunity for guys who either don't own land or have very small parcels. I know that club country by you guys is like small little parcels. And if you're sitting on 12 acres waiting for a deer to walk through it, good luck. I could
Right.
go
Yeah.
sit in the Kmart parking lot and have about the same amount of odds success.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see anything wrong with it done correctly, done under certain regulations, gallon restrictions, whatever. And then on the flip side, you're going to have people who are in law enforcement, like wardens, or we can't regulate that. We can't run around saying, guys, 5 gallons over his limit. Well, to me, it's like it's not my problem. It's your problem.
Right.
I think as a deer hunting state, the hunters should have a say in it. If they don't want it, then they shouldn't have it. If they want it, however, uh, somebody needs to listen to them.
Mm-hmm.
And I know other states have done it successfully. Ohio has done it successfully. Other states are vehemently opposed to it. In Iowa, you can't hunt over bait, but my gosh, I could take a gravity box of mineral and dump it out in spring for them, no problems. And as Ted Nugent, who's a good friend of mine, always says, is there a different biology in Iowa? Is there a different whitetail biology in Iowa than there is in Wisconsin or Michigan? No, there's not.
No.
Whitetail biology is whitetail biology.
Yep.
So if you're saying if it's okay there, it should be okay here. And I know that it pits brothers against brothers and hunting camps against hunting camps. Is to answer your question for CWD, I personally think that they say, well, I'm always playing devil's advocate. One side is saying if we ban baiting, that means that we're taking at least some measure to prevent nose-to-nose contamination among deer.
Okay, yeah.
And on my side, I'm saying, okay, how is that any different than me? What I do legally, plant three acres of purple top turnips, and
Yep.
if you crunch the numbers there, I can produce thousands of turnips on that 3 acres. And if anybody knows anything about how deer eat, a good turnip's bigger than your fist.
Mm-hmm.
And a deer doesn't pick that thing up and eat it. He takes a bite and drops it, walks off, maybe pees on it, poops in the same area. Another deer comes and picks up that turnip. And it's like, we're not worried about that.
Right.
But we're worried about you taking 5 gallons of shelled corn and like spraying it out, over a 30-yard area in front of your tree stand to have an advantageous opportunity if a deer comes by. That's my view on it. And again, it's controversial, but from a disease transmission standpoint, I have yet to see anybody prove to me that is increasing any disease anywhere.
Right.
If I was driving the same gravity box of corn out there and dumping it, well, okay, maybe, but that's not legal.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So I think rational regulations, but my whole standpoint on any of this stuff, it will go from baiting to crossbow usage to muzzleloader use, whatever we're using. To me, I want more hunters in the woods because in strength, in numbers, there's strength.
Mm-hmm.
If we've got Michigan used to have 1 million deer hunters. I don't even know what you guys are down to now. 300,000-400,000.
They estimate, but 400 to 500 maybe on a good year.
500,000.
But that's on a random. I think COVID era, there was a little bit of an uptick, but otherwise it's steadily declining each year.
It's steadily declining, and people say that's because people don't like to deer hunt anymore. Well, you know what? I would counter that and say, if I had the deer and I made it, I didn't make it that difficult. Like I didn't put all these obstacles in front of you. Like I said, if you had the deer numbers and you could, you know what? You're just a guy. You want to go out and gun hunt for 2 days,
Mm-hmm.
but you can't do this and you can't do that. And you can't do this. No, it's America. You can do whatever you want. Not whatever you want, but within reason.
Right.
I say those numbers will still be there in any state. People will show up. If you have the deer, people are going to come up and shoot them. And to that point, you've got Hunters for the Hungry programs begging for venison donations.
Right.
They don't care if you're testing those things for CWD. They're begging. They see through it. No, we'll take the free meat. And if you're doing that and you have the opportunity and you make it, I'm not saying make it super easy for people, but make it that a guy doesn't have to sit there and say, you know what, there's way too much negativity here. I don't want to do it anymore.
Right.
So I know I kind of went off on a couple different tangents there, but to me, I see both sides of most of these issues.
But that, the hunter decline though, that's a good point. So you think, or would you say, hunting numbers are really our last ditch effort to preserve hunting for the future? Like having more people involved, is that the only answer you think? Or is
It's not the only answer, but the thing is like, in my view, the more people we have buying licenses, whether, like I said, whether they are so eaten up by it, by like you and I,
mm-hmm,
or they're just like my brother or my cousin who only goes for 2 days, though all those extra people are exposing other people to hunting,
right,
whether they hunt or not. They might go hunting and they might kill a deer, or they might get a deer, they might make some sausage out of it and give it to their friends who never had any. But guess what? Our community is stronger that way. Rather
right,
than having everybody who's so like gung ho about management and trophy bucks and all this stuff. If we're only preaching to that choir, that's a small choir. As opposed to, I want the big choir. I want the big choir of everybody who's not only participating but exposing non-hunters, because non-hunters are the people that we need
mm-hmm,
for our future. For our future, we need non-hunters support, because they're the ones who are going to say, "Yeah, we should do a city hunt. Why are we paying so-called sharpshooters, and they're doing this across the country, to kill deer at tens of thousands of dollars of expense? Or should we be like Wapaka, Wisconsin, which is where I live?
mm-hmm,
And we're going to allow 100 guys, we're going to give them free doe tags and places to hunt within the city between January and March, and go shoot as many deer as they want. Or I think they give you a couple takes, but they use it as a, we're doing this for free.
right,
Some other cities are saying, well, no, we're going to charge for it. You could turn a negative into a positive. And you can do that by exposing more people to deer hunting, whether they're actually actively participating, or maybe, like I said, those fringe guys and gals who might go, and then they're exposing people who have never been exposed to it. That's my whole point on it. To me, it's you build a community of like-minded people, and your future is going to be bright.
mm-hmm. I mean, I couldn't agree more on the increase in hunters. I think the hardest part is it's kind of become in our current situation, current time frame, that's more or less a private property ownership. I think
Yep.
is unfortunately where you're going to have more success, and then fewer and fewer public land opportunities. So that makes it much more difficult. I also think maybe even the principles have gone askew. Prior to technology, TV, and all this, it was sustainability. You hunted and you harvested. It was culture, and it was a means of food. Where now, a lot of it, like you said, and you are right, it is a small piece to the puzzle, but the trophy bucks and the TV shows and all that. So there is a slight loss from that, where new hunters coming up, they're not necessarily seeing it as like sustainability, more or less, but that's the majority, I would think, of the public.
Majority of the public is exactly that. And thankfully, thanks to social media, we are seeing a lot of people now that are stressing, the self-sustainability of venison, of going out shooting deer. Don't care how big it is. If it's a buck or a doe. If it's a buck, it doesn't have to be a trophy buck. You're seeing, the guys over at Meat Eater. There's, what's her name, Outdoor Alley, or whatever her name is. So they're processing their own meat. So that gives me a lot of hope, because I see a lot of that trending now, where it used to not be that way. It used to be like what you said. It's like, it's all about inches of antler, and you got
Mm-hmm.
guys in certain groups that are like, I see it in Michigan, like, well, you should be more like Iowa. I'm like, no, you shouldn't. Well, we'd have bigger bucks. It's like, it doesn't work that way, number one.
Right.
Number two, if you wanted to be more like Iowa, you'd have to go to Michigan, and say, guess what? 300,000 of you can't go hunting this year.
Right.
And I said, what
Right.
do you mean? Because Iowa only has like 200,000 hunters. So if you want to be like Iowa, you're going to be like what you said. You're going to have the deeded gentry that are hunting private land. And if you're some average schmo, yeah, go ahead and you can try the public land. Well, public land sucks. You're not going to see anything. So then you're going to give it up. So yeah, no, I agree with you. From our future standpoint, and we said this here at Deer and Deer Hunting for as long as I've been here. The future rests on exactly that. It's about it's got to be the meat acquisition. It needs to be near that top. And yes, we do all sorts of and people like to talk flowery. Oh, we create Elder Leopold landscapes by doing all this timber stand improvements and blah 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 blah. Yeah, okay, if that makes you feel good, go ahead and say that. But in that don't get me wrong, I love doing that. So I love working out on land. But the big thing is utilizing that deer. And if you're not utilizing it, or if you have surplus, you're sharing it. And a lot of people are doing that too. And that goes a long ways.
I totally agree. And another question, this is kind of a big one, but how big of a role does the government and politics play into our deer equation? Like for going future-wise here, do you see it maintaining, not maintaining? So as far like Michigan and Wisconsin, I think we're very similar as far as how our regulations are set, right? We have a director of our DNR in Michigan, and they're more or less appointed by the governor. They're nominated. And then we have a Natural Resources Commission. I think you guys have a Natural Resources Board, but It's essentially the same thing. A panel. We have 7 people in ours, and they dictate all of our hunting regulations and policies for each season. And we voted on this. I didn't. I was born in 91, so I didn't have a part of this. But in 96, that's when we voted to have the NRC established and make all of our future judgments. So I guess as far as what you see in Wisconsin, you can't answer for Michigan, but what do you see? Was that a good thing to have a natural resources board?
It's in theory, it's good. It has the potential to be corrupted. Right. And I think you're seeing that more in Michigan than you are seeing here.
Yeah.
And that it has to go to that's partisan lines there. Unfortunately, you guys are on the wrong side. We are too in certain areas. However, in Wisconsin, we also have the Conservation Congress, and that is basically that Natural Resources Board. They are the final say, so to speak.
Right.
But they are supposed to take the recommendation of the Conservation Congress, which, as a citizen, we have meetings every year that people can show up and say, we want this, that, and the other thing. I don't think it should be managed by ballot box. I think any natural resource, deer especially, should be managed by biology. About the animal. What, number one, what's in the best interest of this deer herd, and number 2, how can we manage it for maximum recreation? Because that's, let's face it, that is a natural resource. It's a resource for us, for all of us, for the public. So I think every state, should they be managing towards maximum capacities? No, they need to. Actually, in Wisconsin, by state law, they were supposed to manage within the recommended goals. And the other thing that hunters sometimes lose sight of, because as a hunter, you do get selfish and you want to see as many deer as possible.
Right.
If people can remember this number, it's one I've spit out a million times since I've been here, but 35 deer per square mile is the maximum that you should have on the best habitat.
Okay.
I'm talking the best. So I'm talking like Lee and Tiffany Lakoski, Iowa land best.
Oh, wow.
Now,
okay.
640 acres. Now, does that mean every 640 acres is going to have 35 deer? No, because there's going to be this 645 acres. This square mile is going to have, woods and streams and cover. And then the next square mile might be a center pivot potato field. But all things being equal, now think about that for a second. 35 deer. If in a perfect world, and we drew that map, 35 deer is what? It's 17 males and 17 females.
Mm-hmm.
Of those 17 males, you're going to have, 2, 3, 4 mature bucks?
Yeah.
Now put that in perspective of where you hunt. And I know a lot of Michigan guys listening to this are just like me. I'm hunting 12 acres. Well, what are my odds of killing if we had managed that to goal? So you know where I'm going here is that the state
Yeah.
needs to manage it to goal. If it's not being met, then they need to take, and that's what they do. They give out extra doe tags. We have extra doe seasons. They pull out every rabbit out of their hat to try to make sure that happens.
Mm-hmm.
But going back to your question, I think if hunters, for the most part, hunters are always a silent majority.
Right.
You need to be vocal. You need to reach out to your representatives if that's the way your state is being managed.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to stick with it, because unfortunately you get some of the wrong people into those positions, you're going to have some struggles. But you can't give up hope. You just got to trust that process. And I think for the most part, it does turn out. It does. I haven't seen a bad situation from a hunting perspective where it's like, they say we want to kill them all, and I haven't seen that.
Right.
But I think if it's your system you have in place, actually, to answer your question, I think it's a good system.
Mm-hmm.
I think was designed to be a checks and balance. But at the same time, you can't just rest on your laurels. You have to make sure that the people that you have in those appointed positions are doing their jobs.
So you'd say hunters need to get more involved?
Get more involved, or just be aware of what's going on. And most people are. I mean, most people are aware that, the way they're managing certain things.
Mm-hmm.
Like here, they drew boundary lines. They did away with population estimates. They started going with just like, do you want more, fewer, or the same, in XYZ county, this county? Does it work? Pretty much. I do get a little jaded on that, but basically I think what the DNR's job should be is make it easy enough for me to buy a hunting license,
mm-hmm.
give me the tags that are appropriate, and get out of my way.
Right.
And that's another controversial thing that I've always said, and this would get way too in depth in the weeds, and we could talk for probably an hour on this, but I love bow hunting.
Mm-hmm.
I love crossbow hunting. I love muzzleloader hunting. I love rifle hunting. Provide as many of those opportunities as possible. Just provide as many opportunities you need to manage those deer.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get so hung up on trying to keep one segment down over the other. Provide enough opportunities that everybody can go out and enjoy it, and it's not a stressful situation at the end of the day.
I totally agree. With all that, even the crossbows it's an issue up here in the UP too. But like you said, it's a very controversial topic and go for hours. But they need it absolutely increase it all, more of everything really. As far as hunting goes, I always see Wisconsin. It's like they're kind of one step ahead of us. I would love to see Michigan have county specific regs. I feel like that.
What do they have? What does Michigan have as far as it's not county? Is it just region specific or
it is?
States?
It's okay. So technically region specific to an extent, but largely it is state specific. It is. Here's your 2 tags. Go for it.
Yep.
Which is nuts. I mean, the deer density, when I spoke to our biologist over by our hunting camp, our deer density was 1 deer per square mile.
Oof.
I was like, ooh, I mean, should we even be hunting deer? I mean, they're kind of endangered species.
Yeah.
So that's the only gripe I have with really our Natural Resources Commission or the DNR, whatever. It would be nice to see that. County-specific regs, go ahead, downstate where you have 50, 60 deer per square mile. Yeah, obviously that has to be trimmed down, but there's so many parts of the entire state of Michigan that have low deer densities that there just needs to be more specific regs as far as location goes.
Sure.
But
that makes sense, and that is a stark difference that you see there that you don't really see that disparity in other places.
Yeah. But before we go, Dan, what do you see our future? Just 20 years from now? Are you positive? Are you optimistic or pessimistic of our?
I'm optimistic. I always try to be an optimist.
Okay.
I don't see the deer population going away. I see the deer population getting stronger.
Mm-hmm.
If I am a negative, I'm negative on within. There's too much infighting, and we just touched on it.
Mm-hmm.
Crossbow hunters versus regular bow hunters,
Yep.
rifle hunters versus bow hunters.
Yep.
No matter what, public land guys versus private land guys. But optimistically, I think that, and it goes to what we talked about earlier in the program, is that if the opportunity is there, if you build it, they will come. If you have a deer population, there's going to be hunters. There always will be hunters. Access on private land, obviously a problem. Land prices have gone up to the point where you can't just knock on doors anymore. If a guy's paying $10,000 an acre for land, yeah, you're not just knocking on your door with a smile and getting access to hunt on this land. That's always going to be a problem. It was a problem when I was young. It's a problem now. But guys who like to hunt enough will figure ways out. They'll figure ways out to go hunting. We see that big push towards saddle hunting on public land. There's going to be that. I don't think it's going to get to the point where there's too many people.
Mm-hmm.
You just got to kind of stay ahead of the curve and learn how to read deer. Read some of Richard Smith's books if you need to know how to target deer and pattern them a little bit better. But I'm optimistic that we will always have hunters, because the whitetail has just shown us over 3,000 years that it's actually been 19,000 years, I think, but it's a number one game animal in America for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
It excites us, it keeps us going, and we love the end product.
Absolutely. Well, hey, I can't thank you enough for taking this call. Huge fan. I love your podcast, Deer Talk Now. Thank you very much. Phenomenal. I've listened to all the hunting podcasts.
Just interviewed Roger Ragland today, so that you can look forward to that one.
Okay, that'll be awesome. But hey, before you go, who you got winning the Super Bowl this year?
Oh my gosh, it should have been the Packers and the Steelers, and that just got shot out the door.
Yeah.
Who's winning the Super Bowl? I'm going to go out on a limb, and I hate to say this. Okay, I predict the Rams will win the Super Bowl, but if I had my choice, it would be the Seahawks.
Okay, I'm rooting my wife's from Colorado, so we're going Broncos, but I think that's the likely chance is the Rams for sure.
I can't go for the Broncos just because what they did to us the second time Favre won.
Right.
they destroyed us in that Super Bowl. But I can take that over New England winning it. I can take that over. I'm trying to think of, actually, I wouldn't mind it if Houston did, but I don't think they got a great defense, but I don't think they could.
Yeah, I think they're getting knocked out this weekend, but
they have a great defense.
They do.
They played lights out, but you're going Broncos. I'm going to say Rams, and actually between those two, I hope you're right. I can't stomach LA winning anything else.
No. All right. Well, hey, thanks again, sir. I can't thank you enough, and
absolutely.
I look forward to the rest of your podcasts.
Okay, and same here. Thank you so much, Ryan.
Yep, thank you. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. We appreciate your time. Please like and subscribe. We hope you tune in to our next episode. I'm Ryan, your host. Join us every other Tuesday for our next Wild Game Dynasty podcast.
This podcast is brought to you by Wild Game Dynasty, a professional hunting outfitter and guide service. If you're looking for a world-class adventure in Michigan's premier outdoors, look no further. Book your guided hunt now with Gary Morgan at wildgamedynasty.com.